Wuthering Waves is trash. Or is it? Let's talk about it. In this video I will review my experience with Wuthering Waves. After over 100 hours of gameplay and facing numerous challenges in my challenge run, I believe I have enough experience to provide a comprehensive review of this game. There are aspects I thoroughly enjoyed, but also several that I didn't. Ultimately, I aim to conclude whether Wuthering Waves is a good game and if it is better than Genshin, given their similarities of course. We will compare them. As a disclaimer, this video is to be seen as my opinion only. First off, we'll talk about the positives, then the negatives. That being said, let's start with the positives. The highlight of Wuthering Waves for me is undoubtedly the combat. I have to say it's the best I've experienced in any gacha game so far. The combat is fast, fluid and balanced just right. You get that perfect sweet spot where the damage output feels neither too high nor too low. It's very good, at least for me. It's just right, giving you satisfying feedback with every hit. Now in comparison to Genshin's combat, and let's leave out the elemental reactions for a moment, Genshin's feels a bit slower and not as fluid. Don't get me wrong, Genshin is an older game, so you can excuse their shortcomings that way, but when you put it side by side with Wuthering Waves, the difference is clear. Wuthering Waves just nails that dynamic, high-paced action that keeps you on your toes. Now, I've played almost all the characters during my challenge in Wuthering Waves, and I can confidently say that each one is unique. Even the gun gameplay, which you could compare to Genshin's bow mechanics, feels surprisingly good. Normally, I'm not a big fan of ranged combat in Genshin, but here it's executed well enough to be enjoyable. It's still not my go-to playstyle, but I can appreciate how well it's been done. To summarize my thoughts about the combat, it feels very well. It's better than Genshin in my opinion. And another thing that Wuthering Waves does better than Genshin is exploration. Exploration in Wuthering Waves is another area where the game truly shines. The world itself is vast and each zone you venture into has its own unique flavor. The puzzles are fun and engaging, at least fun and engaging enough. But more than that, it's just a joy to roam around in the world. It feels very good. The landscapes are diverse and there's a real sense of discovery as you explore. It's not just about moving from point A to point B. Well, but why is it better than Genshin's exploration? Wuthering Waves is faster. Running doesn't waste stamina, which makes traversing the world less tedious. Even gliding is improved thanks to the grapple hook function, which I hope they expand upon even more, honestly. In comparison, Genshin can feel slower and more tedious, with stamina management something feeling like a chore. So while Genshin's exploration is okay, Wuthering Waves just makes it more dynamic and fun, in my opinion. Now the ecosystem. The ecosystem in Wuthering Waves is a standout feature, surpassing Genshin's relic system in my opinion. While I haven't yet reached the end game, where you typically farm echoes all day, I found that the ecosystem is much less tedious compared to Genshin's relic system. They've made significant improvements here, and if this trend continues, it bodes well for the game's longevity. One of the things I really enjoyed about the ecosystem is how it integrates it within the combat. Defeating mobs and taking them as echoes adds a new layer of strategy and excitement. It's a lot of fun in my opinion. It's like Pokemon, collecting Pokemon. Plus, the extra echo attack is a nice touch, bringing a fresh change to the system and making it feel more dynamic. It's not just about passive stats, it actively incorporates relics into the combat, enhancing the overall experience. Overall, the ecosystem is a huge improvement over Genshin's approach, once again showing how Wuthering Waves takes a familiar concept and elevates it. I think Wuthering Waves does it a lot. It makes the whole process more engaging and less of a grind, which is a big win in my book. Now lastly, I must give credit where credit is due. While I'll delve deeper into the story in a bit, and I don't like it, just to tell you that now, I want to mention that Scar's story is or was particularly enjoyable. It really stood out as a highlight amidst the broader narrative, and I wanted to make sure I acknowledged that before moving into the negatives, because the story will be a big part of the negatives. With that being said, let's get into the negative aspects of Wuthering Waves. Let's get into the biggest negative point that will be hard to fix, at least for now, the story. In my opinion, the biggest problem for Wuthering Waves is the story. But why is that so? Let's start with the beginning. The story throws you into a world which is fine, but from the moment you begin you are bombarded with names and concepts. Terms like tacit discords are tossed around without much explanation, at least in my opinion. And I might be mistaken, but these concepts aren't really explained well. They just go on and on talking about these intricate details, and as a player you have no idea what's going on. You're just constantly reminded that you're super awesome and possibly centuries old, and everyone wants you to join them, but you have no context for any of it. I don't know, in my opinion it's just annoying. To explain my biggest problem with the story, it's the world building. There's a severe lack of it. You're introduced to a complex world without any proper build-up or explanation, making it hard to get invested in the narrative. This is something that Genshin does much better, providing a more structured and gradual introduction to its world and lore. Now, let's look at Genshin's story beginning. You are tossed into the world in a similar way to Wuthering Waves, but the first objective is clear: find your sibling. It's a simple, relatable goal that immediately gives you direction. Then you walk around a bit and oh look, there's a girl named Venti talking to a dragon. You get the point. The events unfold in a straightforward manner, making it a lot simpler and easier to understand. To summarize, the story of Genshin is a lot better, at least in the beginning, than Wuthering Waves. It provides a clear objective and gradually builds its world, making it more accessible and engaging for new players. So on this point, at least, Genshin takes the lead. Now voice acting. This might come across as a bit harsh, but let's talk about the English voice acting. Honestly, it just didn't hit the mark for me. There are a few exceptions of course, but overall the voice acting was so distracting and frankly annoying that I had to switch to the Japanese voice midway through the story. I'm not entirely sure why that's the case. I don't think the voice actors themselves are to blame here. They're probably talented professionals, but something about the English voice direction just felt off. Maybe it's the way the lines were delivered or the way the characters were portrayed, but it didn't click for me. Dialogue often felt awkward and stilted like with Yang, and it broke the immersion for me multiple times. This could very well be a direction issue. The actors might not have given the right guidance to bring their characters to life in a believable and engaging way. I mean, that's understandable of course, given that it's a Chinese game and the personalities of each individual character is hard to convey in localization of course. Now switching to the Japanese voices made a world of difference, honestly. The performance felt more natural and aligned with the characters' personalities and the overall tone of the game. It's just not about understanding the language, it's about the delivery and the emotion behind the lines as well, which the Japanese voice actors in my opinion nailed. Again, I'm not an expert in voice acting or direction, but as a player the English voices just weren't enjoyable for me. It's a significant part of the experience, and when it doesn't work it can really detract from the overall enjoyment of the game. So while Wuthering Waves excels in many areas, the English voice acting is one aspect that could use some serious improvement. If the direction were better, it might make a huge difference and help players connect more deeply with the story and characters. Technical difficulties. Now, I haven't encountered too many technical difficulties with this game myself. I experienced a bit of stuttering and some network issues, but these didn't affect my gameplay too much. However, some comments made me aware that the technical issues were much worse than I had initially expected. After doing a bit more research, I have to say that these issues are quite severe. We're talking about game crashing bugs, login issues, and a host of other problems. Kuro, the developers, have even acknowledged these issues themselves. Now, every game these days launches with a few bugs, it's nothing new, but for a game as controversial as Wuthering Waves, standing in direct competition with Genshin, this is particularly bad. The first few days after a game's release are crucial. That's when most people want to try it out, and if you can't hook them during this time, it's pretty much game over. Most players won't stick around to see if things get better. They try it, encounter issues and move on. That's it. They're not going to look into announcement or updates from Kuro, they're just done. For Wuthering Waves this was a big miss. They had one chance to make a solid first impression and the technical difficulties severely hampered that. It's a shame because the game has a lot of potential, but these issues can really turn players away before they even get to experience the good parts. It's not just about comparing it to Genshin, though that does add an extra layer of pressure. Any game facing such severe technical problems right at launch is going to struggle to maintain its player base. And when looking at the target audience of Wuthering Waves, first impressions are everything. So while my personal experience with technical difficulties was relatively minor, I have to acknowledge that for many players these issues were a major drawback. It's something that Kuro needs to address quickly and effectively if they want Wuthering Waves to compete with Genshin in the slightest. And yes, I know that they've already rolled out a lot of bug fixes already, but there are still a lot more issues that haven't been fixed yet. Well, we've talked a lot about Wuthering Waves, but what do I ultimately think about it? Is it better than Genshin, worse, or on the same level? Honestly, it's not as straightforward as I thought it would be. For me, Wuthering Waves is better than Genshin. Yes, gameplay and combat are the most important aspects for a game for me, and Wuthering Waves excels in these areas. The combat is fast, fluid, and engaging, making every encounter feel exciting. I don't care as much about the story, so the lack of world building and a confusing start didn't really bother me too much. The issue with the English voice acting can be mitigated by playing with Japanese voices or others, which I already do for many other games. It's a simple switch that made a big difference for me, and it's something many players might find improves their experience. As for the technical issues, I get that these are a big deal, especially for new players looking for a new game to get into. Bugs, crashes, login problems, you know. For someone like me who was really looking forward to playing Wuthering Waves already, these issues are temporary. I'm confident they'll fix them in due time. Plus, the developers seem really cool. I mean, they acknowledge the problems and even give the players many pulls and a free 5-star, not like another game, you know what I'm talking about, which is awesome in my opinion. And let's not forget, the story can always be improved upon. Games often evolve over time, and there's plenty of room for Wuthering Waves to grow and refine its narrative. So, while Wuthering Waves has its flaws, I believe it has the potential to become something great. It already offers a fantastic combat and exploration experience that I personally find superior to Genshin. If they can iron out the technical issues and improve the story, it could very well be the top game in the genre. We don't know. You don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows. Okay, this concludes my video. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to tell me your opinions in the comments below. I'm really interested in how you see the game, especially compared to Genshin. And well, if you enjoyed, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.